Missing someone with all your missing someone.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week I have a client that is brand new. I've never done her hair before, and she wanted something that is going to grow out a little bit softer. Her last color, it looks very solid, and she wanted something eventually to be blonder, a little bit less warm. So a little bit about her color history is she was going to a hairdresser, and the hairdresser had overtoned her hair and made her hair brown. And then a week later, after going accidentally too dark, they tried to remove that toner, and so that's why you kind of see quite a bit of warmth in there. I'm pretty sure the hairdresser before might have just like put lightener on everything, so there are pieces that were probably like technically her natural in between the highlights that got warm. And then another thing I want to mention right now that I'm showing you is that there's a lot of breakage on the top part there, and so today I'm going to be low lighting and highlighting to break up this color to make it grow out a little bit softer. So you saw that that top layer is extremely short and compared to the bottom, and it's a bit disconnected, so I got to create low lights that are not going to emphasize the disconnection from the top part to the bottom. So right now I am highlighting the hairline because I just want to break this up a little bit. Everything looks a little bit too solid, so I'm just going to do a foil here. Her regrowth is not super long, so I really don't want to over highlight her because essentially she does want something that is a little bit more dimensional and softer when it grows out. So for this type of application, when we're doing the highlight portion, we're gonna work on less is more, because if I over highlight it, then we're kind of back to where she is right now, which is something that's too solid. So I want to make sure that I'm really careful with my placement and where I place these highlights strategically. So I'm gonna go in and pretty much start here where the occipital is. This is kind of where I would start like the partial if I were to do a partial highlight, and I find that I did it this way because her regrowth again is not very long. So I'm just going in and I'm painting with my lightener. So the lightener that I'm using today is the Blonde Me Schwarzkopf lightener. I'm using it with just 20 volume, and even though her natural is a lot darker, than you can see some of the warmth that's in there. I'm not going to be using a different developer for those warm spots, even though her natural is a lot darker. I'm just going to be using the same formula throughout the whole application, and the way that I'm going to alter the difference in lift is going to be my saturation. So in those dark areas, I'm going to do a heavier saturation, and then wherever I see like that warm band, I'm going to just gradually like feather over it with the lightener, so it's not like fully saturated like it is in the parts that I need a lot of lift. It's just kind of brushed on gently, and that's going to help even everything out without using a different developer. So in our consultation, our goals were to eventually get her lighter, but because she had all these short pieces in this top area, I was really nervous to lighten her, and I told her I couldn't because I wanted to see how her hair reacts first with me just even lightening up the band. Her hair has been blow dried and styled, and I haven't felt what it feels like wet yet, so I really don't know how healthy her hair really is. After doing like a full application like this and then blow drying and toning, at the end of the service I'll get a pretty good idea of what her hair can handle, so that I can assess what I'm going to be using the next time when we do her color, and what products to use that might better suit and get her to her goal. So today I'm just doing mostly focusing on breaking up the roots and breaking up the solid blonde that's on the mids and ends with some low lights, and that's it. We're not going to be brightening any of the previous highlights because I'm not really sure if the breakage that she has is from her previous color or if it's from the way that she's been maintaining her hair. So she naturally has really, it's not super curly, but it's got some frizz and it does have some wave to it, and she does put heat on it quite often. So that was also a little bit concerning because I wanted to see if we could create a regimen for her that would get her hair a little bit healthier, because even though she does put a lot of heat on her hair, I wanted to give her some tips on how to kind of put a little bit more gentle heat or get her hair a little bit smoother without putting such high heat. So during this whole time that I'm doing her hair, I'm going through my list of questions, and some of the things that I ask are, what products are you using at home, and then what tools are you using at home? And she brought to my attention that she was using the Revlon round brush blow dry tool, where it's a one piece tool that looks like a round brush and it heats up and blows out hot air. And the only reason I get really skeptical about clients using that is because that machine or that tool, it gets really hot. There's nothing that kind of regulates the heat. It just, over time, as you use it, like, it just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And even though you could be putting it on the lowest setting, that thing does gradually get hotter, and there's no stopping. It's kind of like leaving something in the oven. It just keeps cooking. And by the time, usually when clients use that product or hot tool to dry out their hair, by the end of them doing their whole head, it can burn the hair because that tool eventually gets really hot by the time that they're done blow drying their whole head. So I've seen with a lot of clients that have used that, they do have a ton of breakage, very similar to what she has going on right now. So that's just something that I kind of go through to see if they are willing to change the type of tool that they're using, or maybe use it differently, or pair it with other products that could help protect the hair a little bit more. By the end of the service, I realized that it was very obvious that the hair felt pretty healthy, and I really do feel like a lot of the breakage that she had was from the hot heat styling that she was doing at home. So some of the indications that I know that is because when it's wet, it felt pretty healthy, and when I toned her hair, it didn't feel super porous. When hair is really porous, that means it's probably been over processed, and it didn't feel that way at all when I toned her and after doing the whole service and blow drying her. So I really did feel like it was the way that she was using her hot tools and doing and styling her hair at home. So I did warn her and suggested some other techniques that she could use and products that she could incorporate to help that. And then in addition, I did recommend that we do some trims quite often. So I always tell my clients to come in for regular trims every 3 to 4 months. But if your hair is really damaged and you feel like your hair keeps breaking, or getting tangled a lot, or use a lot of heat on it, then I tell my clients it's probably best to come in every 2 to 3 months to get rid of those split ends, because I feel like what happened to her hair on that top section that was really short is that she never really got those ends trimmed, and they did have a lot of split ends and heat damage. And honestly, the only way to get rid of damaged ends when they're split or have heat damage is to cut those off. Like, there's no amount of product or bonder or anything that could really save it once it's broken or like split. So after we did the color, I did do some surface cutting on her, and eventually we're gonna work on doing that every couple months. And then I told her, if we do this every few months and you use a little bit less heat or use the right products, your hair should definitely grow, because she told me that she's always had these short pieces in those areas, but also she's been heat styling it for the last couple years, so it's hard to say. But my goal for her is to get her hair really healthy so that we can eventually get her to her dream color and that blonde that she wants, and have everything grow up nice and healthy and long. So really quick, I just want to describe what I was doing for her foil placement. So as I'm doing that partial placement with the highlights, starting at the back crown area, I do a mohawk section all the way to the front. She did say she wanted the front a little bit lighter, so I did a very gradual lighter money piece. For the money piece, I did a few weaves and then connected that to the back with just slices. And then I did a couple weaves on the side to create a little bit of brightness there for that part of the money piece. And now I'm just doing the side and connecting the front to the back with some other foils. So I did a weave above the ear to connect the rest of the hairline. And then I'm taking about an inch section and slicing until I reach the mohawk section. And again, I am trying to do a heavier saturation in my dark areas and then lightly feathering the product in the banded areas. And that's just gonna help lighten those up. So after I do the highlights, now I'm gonna be going in and adding in her lowlights at the same time. So I'm starting my lowlights a little bit lower from where I started her highlights, and I want you guys to see where I kind of end her lowlight. So in our consultation, I did ask her, would she want to see the lowlights coming all the way through the bottom? Or would she prefer the look to where the roots are darker and then it gets lighter towards the ends and keeping those ends nice and solid? And so she told me she would much prefer have it be darker at the top and then lighter on the ends and keeping the ends nice and solid. So with my placement of the lowlights, you can see I'm painting and feathering down. I would say somewhere around like the mid neck area is where I kind of end the feathering, and that's just kind of visual of where I'll stop my highlights, my lowlights of the placement. So I have that visual even when I'm going through the shorter pieces, because these shorter pieces, since they're so short, they don't even reach the middle of the back of the neck. So I'm just gonna paint all the way through the whole section and slice when I'm doing the lowlights on the top, because I want it to still end in the same area. And since my lowlights in the mohawk section are in the back here, I am pretty much just bringing it back and just keeping that in mind that that's where it's going to end. And that's how I'm kind of creating the illusion that I'm not emphasizing any disconnection in her layers or anything. It does, at the end you'll see it really does blend in very well, even though there is that disconnection within the haircut. If I were to not have that visual point of where to end and I just kind of ended the lowlights the same throughout all of the slices, like let's say I did a lowlight and then stopped painting in the mid of the foil and I did that all over, it would look really disconnected and not very cohesive once it's all dried. So it's good to have a visual when you're doing a lowlight like that, to have a point in the head or around the neck area or wherever it may be, to where you stop, and that's like your visual of where the lowlights kind of stop and then gradually go into the lighter portion of the ends. So when we rinse out the highlights and the lowlights, I like to rinse the foils one by one. This is going to help prevent any of the lowlights bleeding onto the highlights. And so we kind of just gradually will pull one out and just rinse one by one. If I were to just do highlights, then I wouldn't have to worry about the lowlights bleeding on, and I just kind of pull out all the foils all at once. But since we're doing lowlights, I like to do the rinse out one by one on the foil to prevent any type of bleeding or discoloration, because even just a little bit of lightener that like lays on the lowlight just for even like a few seconds can potentially ruin the lowlights, because we did use a demi. So for her lowlight formulation too, I did a demi permanent and I mixed up a level 6 gold. And the reason why I did a level 6 gold is because she is pretty much, I would say in some areas she's like a level 9, in some areas she's like a level 8, and we're going as dark as a level 6, so I needed some gold in there to kind of help fill the hair. The demi permanent line that I'm using today, their naturals are a little bit on the ashier side, and I have felt like if I were to just low light with that, sometimes it can get a little bit muddy if it doesn't like fit, if I don't have some warmth in there from going from a blonde tone to like more of a level 6 tone. So that's why I chose to use the level 6 gold to kind of act as a little bit of a filler in there, but I didn't want to add anything that was going to be too warm, so I felt like gold was the perfect warm undertone that we were going to deposit back into the hair for these lowlights. So now going in with the toner, I did mix up a root shadow color and then a lighter tone with a demi-permanent. So right now I'm going in with her root shadow. For the root shadow, I did a demi-permanent, a level 6 natural, and again, like I said earlier, the demi-permanent line that I am using is a little bit more on the ashy side. So this level 6 natural is more of a, I would say it cancels out a good amount of warmth for a natural tone. So I'm applying that on the head and taking horizontal sections and just placing that and painting on, I would say, about an inch of the shadow root. And I sectioned out her hairline, so I usually will do an inch kind of like diagonal back from wherever she parts her hair and leave that out because I like to tone the hairline after I tone the back, because I find that the hairs are a little bit finer and they always tone a lot faster than the hairs in the back, and I never want to see like the hairline darker than the back, so I always make sure that I tone that part last. So after I have placed the shadow root, I just go directly in with the lighter color. I don't brush out the shadow root. For her lighter toner, I did a mixture of like a level 8. So I mixed in a level 8 violet with a level 8 ash, but in this formula, there's more level 8 violet than there is level 8 ash, and this is going to just help cancel out a lot of that warmth in her hair. So in our consultation too, even though she wanted to be blonde, I told her, since we're not lightening it and she does want to be on the ashier side, that toning out a lot of this warmth will make her look a little bit darker. And I brought out a swatch book to ask her how dark she would be comfortable with being, and we both agreed that a level 8 would be the darkest that she would want to be leaving today. And so that's why I chose to mix those two tones up. And so the violet and the ash at a level 8 is going to be perfect to canceling out a lot of the warmth, but keeping her still on the brighter side if possible. So I'm applying the lighter toner in the mid and brushing it out. And I let this sit on for about like 10 minutes or so. And then I placed the rest of the toner on her ends for just a couple minutes to kind of create the look to where the ends are a little bit lighter, because the toner didn't technically sit on those areas for as long as it did in the mid sections of her hair. And so essentially the ends are not going to be toned as the mid sections of her hair, because I didn't let the toner sit on those areas too long. It's going to preserve a little bit of that brightness, but it will be a little bit warmer than the areas that the toner did sit on a little bit longer. Alrighty guys, so here is the finished look. You can see how the lowlights look very cohesive throughout. They end like in the same area and looks super natural. You can hardly even tell that she has that disconnection on that top layer of her hair that we are going to be working on growing out. I really do love the way that the lowlights blend in, and as her color fades out, it's going to grow out a lot softer compared to what she had before. You can see her roots are nice and softly blended, and a lot of that warmth is also canceled out, but keeping her ends a little bit on the brighter side, even though they are a little bit on the warmer side as well. But overall, she really loved her hair, and I feel like this is a great first session towards her goal eventually. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.